What is going on, Sharp football family? It is your resident Swami of Konami, Rich Hribar. We are a little behind schedule today, but we made it. We're here. We're locked in before kickoff of some of these games tonight, and it is the first full weekend of NFL teams playing in the preseason after we got the Hall of Fame game out of the way. So that means, if you are, getting ready for your fantasy drafts, thanks to our partnership at Underdog Fantasy, Sharp Football is offering our draft kit for $1 to anyone that signs up and deposits $10 on Underdog. So if you're looking for more of what we have talked today on today's show, check out the podcast description or go to sharpfootballanalysis.com and search for the draft kit to learn more about this promotion. With the housekeeping out of the way, we could talk some football finally. And today I'm joined by one of my favorite people in the industry. I mean, he's obviously a titan in this space. You guys know him as the big dog, Big Papa Pump. Some know him as the Silverback Gorilla. I am always eternally grateful to this guest because he opened up so many doors to allow me to kind of get to where I'm at right now. And it is Evan Silva from now Establishing the Run. Evan, what is going on, brother? We made it.
Yeah, we did make it, and we had to jump through some hoops. My day has been crazy so far. It consisted of McDonald's breakfast, a funeral on the south side of Chicago, driving back in just sweltering traffic, and then trying to tech lord for 40 minutes with Rich to try to get this stream working. But we're here, and after this, I think I'm gonna go to the bar for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I might hit it during the show after that last 40 minutes. It was, we were like, it was like the clip from Zoolander. The files are inside the computer where it's like monkeys just trying to hit this thing, trying to figure out this stuff. You forget how much you're at the mercy of all this stuff working, right? Like you take it for granted when everything just works and you can either do a show and when something doesn't go wrong or it's on a schedule, you just are like, what is happening? Like, it just throws you off so much. But, yeah, listen, we are here, man. August 10th. Like we've got kind of everyone playing this week. We're gonna hopefully see some guys play. We don't want any injuries though. That's not one thing we want. We don't want to be establishing going in and changing all these rankings and moving guys off of projections and stuff like that. So hopefully we make it through unscathed. Let's hit some of this stuff here off the top. Kind of like the big news we got at the tail end of last week was that Alvin Kamara suspension finally came down. It was only going to be 3 games. So let's kind of hit some of the fallout there. Kamara for me is kind of like a no man's land player. Even like going into this, knowing it's only 3 games, I still don't really know how to handle Alvin Kamara. Like one from a player stance, like do we believe there's like some kind of reduction in his play? There's some very clear signal that the Saints want to get him back to being a space player after like 2 years of being kind of like a lead back. He ran into heavy boxes at the highest rate of his career the last 2 years, kind of sapped some of his efficiency. Do we see him get used in the passing game again more? Is this team conservative? You're someone that has some good ties, behind the scenes, to Saints folks there. Mm-hmm. What is your kind of read on the Saints situation? Is Alvin Kamara someone like you think is a value now? Were you drafting him even before this? Like, how are you handling him now moving forward?
I was drafting him before this because he was falling into a region where I was like, if something breaks right here, I could end up with a really good value. And I think that something did break right because I thought that there was a chance that he could get 6 games. Rap Sheet had mentioned the possibility that he could get 6 games. I thought it was likely that he would get 4. And then now he gets 3 with the possibility potentially that on appeal it could be reduced to 2. And I think he's still, maybe with the exception of Chris Olave now, the most talented player in the Saints skill position core. Those ties that you mentioned shared the same concerns that we do. Alvin Kamara was not very good last year. It was the worst year of his career. His usage was strange because they would pull him on passing downs frequently under Pete Carmichael. But those ties say that Alvin Kamara looks great this year. He looks a lot more explosive. He seems motivated. He sounded like genuinely like he had contrition after, the mistake that he made that led to the suspension. It sounds to me like he's motivated. He looks awesome in camp. And I have him in the 60s right now overall, which would be like a 5th, 6th turn player. And I mean, before I was taking him like in the 7th, 8th. And so I think I got a little bit of equity there. But I still like him. I mean, he's going to have to, he's going to miss the first 3 games in all likelihood. And then when he comes back, he's going to have to share with Jamal Williams. But I think he's going to be more involved in the passing game, and he's going to be a big playmaker for the Saints, who I think have a chance to be pretty darn good, at least based on their schedule, because they have the easiest schedule in the NFL, like by a margin.
Yeah, that's one of the things when you look at the Saints in this Alvin Kamara situation is on their first year under Dennis Allen, and Pete Carmichael's been there for years, but the first year, like with them kind of just running the show, they were really conservative. They were a very slow offense. And it's really hard to say, like, because Andy Dalton was efficient last year, but they clearly view Derek Carr as like a clear upgrade. Like they aggressively went after Derek Carr. So like, does that open things up? Does this offense look a little bit different than it did a year ago? Do they just kind of control games though too? And are they afforded to play slow? This was a team that could, because Andy Dalton was efficient, but it was like that manipulated efficiency that we see like guys like, Jimmy Garoppolo have over his career. You don't have a lot of pass attempts, but you're connecting on like those plays that have like high success and like manipulate yards per pass attempt and stuff, like a lot of those deep shots. That's like what Andy Dalton was doing last year. A lot of play action, a lot of vertical passing on low pass attempts. And Derek Carr was good downfield last year. He stunk with the Raiders in the intermediate levels and shallow areas. But, do we see just like that same offense? Do you have any kind of like take, even because Chris Olave is like, we're not doubting the talent of Chris Olave at all, but is this a situation where like maybe he doesn't get like 150 targets at his ADP and he's like around like the 125 mark?
Yeah, I think I think he's one of the biggest conundrums in fantasy this year. I mean, he had a really nice rookie season. I saw you guys posted about his yards per route run. For a rookie, like having that level of yards per route run, I think he was right around 2.3. That's an awesome number. And you look historically, like rookie wide receivers that have that level of yards per route run, those dudes are hits in the NFL, like big hits. How much of Derek Carr's downfield passing efficiency last year can we owe to playing with Devontae Adams?
Yeah, that's the kind of the question mark, right? Because he wasn't good throwing to anyone else. He was actually bad downfield throwing to Darren Waller. So it was literally all Devontae and Josh McDaniels. Like, I know Josh McDaniels, the head coach, gets a bad rap, and I'm not trying to defend him, but like when you look at Josh McDaniels, like his history as a play caller, like there's a reason he was coveted to be a head coach. And there were plays where Devontae Adams was just naked last year. Like just completely naked. Like you think his walk-off versus the Broncos. And then you go back to the year before that with Mac. He had rookie Mac Jones, and they were top 10 in scoring rate per drive with rookie Mac Jones. And 2 years before that, think of what he coaxed out of that Cam Newton-led offense. Like, so say what we want about Josh McDaniel, the head coach, but like as like an offensive play caller and implementing like offensive production, he was good at it. Derek Carr was bad last year and the Raiders were good at it. There's a reason Josh McDaniel keeps getting these opportunities because he's good at that.
Yeah, I would say over the course of the last, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years, Josh McDaniel's a top 5 play caller in the NFL. The problem with Josh McDaniels, he's a dick.
Yeah.
Likes him. That's his problem. It's not his play calling ability for sure.
Yeah, so the Saints are a real tricky team for me. And then like we look at some of this fallout now, and does this make like Jamal Williams less appealing for you, or only like if you've gone like wide receiver heavy and you're just trying to run into like a 3-week bridge, maybe you're waiting on like Breece Hall, right? Like maybe you were looking at a guy like adding Jamal Williams for like these 3 games, and hopefully by then Breece Hall is like kind of ramped up, because we know Breece Hall is going to be a guy that, like his workload is going to start off probably limited. So does this take any shine off of Jamal Williams? Were you into Jamal Williams before any of this?
I mean, I'm never into Jamal Williams. He
won you those ducats last year, though.
I know he did. He won me a lot of money, but that was, I mean, when I pressed the button, I was like, this ain't gonna happen, but for people that don't know, I won. I bet $100 on Jamal Williams to lead the NFL in rushing touchdowns at 100-1. So that won $10K. So that was like an awesome win. It was like, but I didn't have like the greatest season last year, but like I got that. So every year try to at least find one thing to hang your hat on. But I mean, at the end of the day, Jamal Williams is a guy who's going to average, 3.9 to 4.2 yards per carry. He's going to get what's blocked. the coaches love him because they can trust him because he can pass block. He doesn't put the football on the ground. He can catch he's not going to drop passes. And again, he's going to take advantage of any openings that are there for him. But projected for, even when Alvin Kamara comes back, I think you'll get 3 useful weeks out of him, RB2 weeks out of him. And then he's going to be like a 9 to 12 touch per game player who doesn't have explosiveness to his game. And you're just going to go touchdown hunting with him. And if he scores a touchdown, he'll be decent for you. And if he doesn't, then he's going to be bad for you.
Yeah, one last guy here too that's kind of involved in this is Kendre Miller, who was kind of like a 0 RB guy. You and I actually talked on the phone about Kendre Miller after the draft. Really liked him as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time finding like where he fits into this, especially with Kamara only getting 3 games, with Jamal Williams and Taysom Hill being there, and with kind of the history of rookie running backs not being trusted in the passing game. He was a guy that in college didn't really have a passing game role. He's still floating around like the RB 47, 48 mark. We saw the Saints kind of kick the tires on Kareem Hunt a little bit this week. Benjamin did get hurt in camp too. Keep that in mind as well. But like, where do you see like Kendre Miller kind of fitting into this? And like, he was probably a guy you could take some swings on, but do you see like a clear path for him this year?
Yeah, I had not seen him play at all in college. And then when I was doing my draft grades, I watched, 30 carries from him, and I was like, whoo, this dude is a ball. And the ties that you mentioned earlier say that he's having a great training camp because he got off to a really slow start. I think he was out of shape actually during
knee surgery.
And he had knee surgery. And he started camp on NFI, but then he came off really quickly. And apparently he's actually looked really good in the passing game in training camp so far. So sometimes you wonder, hey, did this guy just not get the opportunities in college? That remains to be seen. I saw your tweet thread about Kendre Miller earlier this week, and I agree with it. He's a long game play. Mm-hmm. You're going to need like Alvin Kamara or Jamal Williams to go down for Kendre Miller to really be a fantasy factor, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And, I understand like there was some, you take some swings in these drafts early in case Kamara got like the 6 games and then maybe he just plays well enough that where like he's involved, right? But it feels like that's going to be shrunk. The thorn of it all is like the Taysom Hill stuff, right? Like, because there's no reason why the Saints should stop using Taysom Hill. Like he's excellent at what he does, and excellent. And he's such a factor in the goal line area. So I kind of wanted to use the Alvin Kamara, like me not really having like a strong, like he's one of these guys. Like sometimes we don't have like convictions on some of these players, right? And like you and I will talk on the phone and we'll see if maybe you can help me or I can help you. And I want to try to use that as like an opportunity for a couple more of these guys that like I'm not really for or against. I just am kind of no man's land with. So the first guy I kind of want to talk to you about is Rhamondre Stevenson. Like I don't really like. I see like the talent with Rhamondre Stevenson, the situation. There's some upside here. I don't like any of their backups. I have some like. I kind of like Pierre Strong a little bit as a prospect, but none of these guys are particularly good behind him. So the signal is like he's going to be like this huge workload guy, right? But then like the Patriots are another one of these teams that have been sniffing around guys. Rhamondre Stevenson came out himself and said like the workload caught up to him last year, and like down the stretch he lost a lot of juice. And he's a guy that goes at like the 2-3 turn. And sometimes in your general population leagues, like there's some really good players, maybe some like the guys like Jalen Waddle are available there, or some of these other wide receivers that slide through like a Chris Olave. And I found myself just like every time I'm on the clock, I'm like, do I feel strongly about taking Rhamondre or not? So can you sell me on one side of the coin here?
So I'm doing this on my phone. I just got a phone call and then I couldn't hear most of what you said, but I think just you just asked me, I had to leave the room and then come back. But you're just asking me my thoughts on Rhamondre Stevenson, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, he's a guy I don't really have like conviction on in either direction. So if you can kind of sway me to a side.
I do. I mean,
all right, hit me.
The best player on the Patriots offense, and I think they're going to feed him. And, there's been some concern about the Patriots adding another RB. They worked out Leonard Fournette. I think they worked out some other guys. They've been linked to Dalvin Cook as well. But I think Rhamondre Stevenson is a baller, and I think he's shown us that. I mean, he outplayed Dameon Harris, who was like a legit – I think he's a legit good 2-down back in the NFL. And then I think Rhamondre Stevenson, his efficiency in the passing game wasn't great, but I mean, the dude can catch, and they trust him in pass pro. I mean, I think he's an every down back, at least right now, as it stands right now, on an offense that is now going to be coordinated by an actual, and I don't love Bill O'Brien, but an actual NFL offensive coordinator, as opposed to that, that
Right.
Matt Patricia and whatever they were doing last year. I mean, that was ridiculous. So I love Rhamondre. I have him as a top 10 RB.
Are you taking him right now over any of these guys kind of in limbo, the Jonathan Taylors, the Josh Jacobs?
Yes, over Jonathan Taylor. No, Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, I think it's still going to be kind of. I still think they're going to work it out, and that's a dude who's a true every down back. I mean, he had a career year in his first season under Josh McDaniels, who all of a sudden were gassing up unexpectedly. Jonathan Taylor, the issue to me is like, he's never been an asset in the passing game. Anthony Richardson's throw rate to running backs at Florida was astronomically low. The design of the offense is going to not cater to really anybody getting passing volume in Indianapolis. And they have two craters on their offensive line at left tackle and right guard. So, and Jonathan Taylor, I don't know, maybe it's just because he's holding in, but apparently he's still recovering from last year's ankle injury, which honestly, as many times he aggravated that, like, it shouldn't surprise anyone. That was like a big, big issue for him. He showed a lot of toughness playing through that. But I mean, there are like a laundry list of concerns for Jonathan Taylor outside of his fallout with ownership, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if everyone follows my work knows that I'm like super cognizant of like not drafting players attached to rookie quarterbacks. And I understand like Jonathan Taylor, like there's a very low bar for him to be better than he was last year. But I mean, history has shown us like these guys don't attach themselves to like a lot of fantasy assets. I mean, since the NFL went to 32 teams in 2002, there have been 51 first-round rookie quarterback picks that have made 5 or more starts. I think we believe Anthony Richardson will make 5 or more starts this year. I believe he should start week 1. We'll see if that happens. Amongst those quarterbacks, there have just been 12 RB1 seasons. 74% of the leading running backs had a dip in scoring production that year with those rookie quarterbacks. It's just really hard. And it makes inherent sense, right? Like a lot of these teams that have high draft picks aren't good teams, right? And it takes a while for them to go. And especially when you factor in Anthony Richardson's a more unique talent because he's more of a run first guy right now. We have to see what Shane Steichen can kind of develop in the passing game for him. It's just really hard to invest in that Colts offense. I've seen some people trying to talk about Michael Pittman being a value. Right. I did this last year with Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris with Kenny Pickett. It's, just something I have a philosophy on. Like, I don't really invest into guys attached to these rookie quarterbacks, which leads me to this other guy. The next guy I'll ask you about is Dameon Pierce, right? Who goes get CJ Stroud, looks like an upgrade. This offensive line looks actually low-key kind of good. Like how the Panthers, remember how the Panthers kind of rebuilt their line and it's just like, oh yeah. Like that's kind of feel about the Texans and maybe even a little better than what the Panthers did. But we saw Dameon Pierce was a guy who at Florida never had a high workload. And we thought it was because of the coaching staff, right? Like this is donkey coaching. This guy looks like an animal. Why aren't they giving him the ball? But then the first time in his career, he gets a workload. He breaks and he like the back half of it. So like, are the Texans cognizant about that? Did that factor in their decision to because they were kind of aggressive on Devin Singletary in free agency, which is interesting. So like, what is kind of like can you sell me on Dameon Pierce at all?
I share all of your concerns. Number one, number two, I know Texans people and I think they're all in on Dameon Pierce. They actually were connected a little bit during the draft to Bijan Robinson. Had he fallen to, I think, number 11? That obviously didn't happen. But I think that I think they're all in on Dameon Pierce. And I think that Devin Singletary is just a change of pace back who is bad in the passing game. And Dameon Pierce is like kind of good in the passing game. But I mean, I do share all of your concerns. I've drafted a little bit of Dameon Pierce, a decent amount, maybe 10% of my drafts, maybe 8%, something in that range. I think that he's set. And you mentioned the offensive line, like that. They stole Shaq Mason.
2 years in a row, someone just got a freebie.
Brandon Thorn has Laramie Tunsil as the number 2 left tackle in all of football, behind only Trent Williams. Titus Howard, he just got hurt, but I think he'll be back for week 1. They just gave him a big extension. I mean, they got some legit players up front. I don't know. I like Dameon Pierce as like a lower end RB2. I'm not super excited about him, but I mean, I think he's a solid pick.
Let me ask you about one other running back kind of in that area, and then maybe we'll talk about some wide receivers. The other guy that like I just am like ho-hum about is Cam Akers.
Yeah.
Cam Akers had like this great final stretch of the season where he was basically top 5 in the NFL in every rushing category the final 5 weeks of the season, helped fantasy championships out a lot. But it's like there was no Matthew Stafford. There was no Cooper Kupp. The wide receivers were all dead. Like we've seen Cam Akers give us like these flashes of like pockets of a season where he's really good and then just kind of disappear again. Do you believe that like the Rams are going to kind of go back to like that approach of just giving him, like there was weeks where he was playing 100% of the snaps to close the season. Is that going to happen again? Do you think that now this offense is fully healthy? He's a full year removed away from the Achilles injury. Like it's a contract year. Like, I don't really know what to do with Cam Akers. If I should buy any of this or like he's like a value or not.
Yeah, I think that well, man, you look at that Rams depth chart, the running back depth chart, it's like there's nobody there. I mean, it's the most.
Do you like Kyren Williams at all?
I liked him as a college player. He's
getting a little buzz. I wonder how much we should stock it.
He's 195 pounds.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? He's a guy that coaches love. I went to Notre Dame games and I would like sit behind the sideline, and like Kyren Williams was the leader of the team. Like he was the one like rallying everybody. I mean, he's like a guy that coaches absolutely love. He'll play special teams. You know what I mean? Like he'll return punts. I mean, he'll do whatever you want. He's a football player, but he's not a guy that you can give a substantial workload to in the NFL. I mean, he's not a good athlete and he weighs 190 pounds. So, and then it's Zach Evans, who I don't know. Some people like him. And then Sony Michel.
He just retired.
Right. Yeah. So the workload competition for Cam Akers is like almost non-existent. And then you look back at what he did over the final 6 games. I think he had 300-yard games. He scored a bunch of touchdowns. The Achilles thing still bothers me because the history of running backs off Achilles is just it doesn't work. So is that going to come back to haunt him? But I mean, right now, I mean, I think, if you're doing statistical projections, you have to give Cam Akers a pretty massive workload.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. He does show up as like a value, but like anytime you're doing projections that are based off of just kind of like the initial depth charts like this, like those guys pop, but there's the variable of like a lot pulling that projection down that you have to factor in, like when you actually rank the players or it's time to pick them in drafts. I talked a little bit about this on a podcast like a couple weeks ago about like, Chris Godwin, right? Like from a top down, if you're just doing like the numbers, he still shows up as like a solid pick in projections, but then like you still know all of these other variables exist and like a range of outcomes that can pull this thing apart. So you have to factor in, and when do you find value on those guys? So like you might like Cam Akers. You don't have to take him like rounds ahead of ADP, but maybe you just take him a little bit ahead of ADP, right? If you do like him, that way you kind of secure like getting the kind of the max value you can.
And he's not a guy that you want to take above ADP. He's a guy that you only draft when he falls past his ADP.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Yeah. All right, let's talk about a couple of wide receivers real quick. Where you at right now in Chicago? Obviously, there's like so much buzz on the Bears, man. The Bears, like, dude, the Bears opened like 100-1 for the Super Bowl, and I think they're down to 50-1. They like everyone is back on this Bears bandwagon. But like we're seeing DJ Moore. Obviously, DJ Moore's a guy who has burned a lot of fantasy gamers, or we've just been waiting, right? Like we understand and hearing like all these things show up that like he's a good player, but he's been held back by quarterback play. Do we believe Justin Fields? Because we've seen everyone draws this corollary, right? It's a Stephon Diggs going to Josh Allen. This is Jalen Hurts getting AJ Brown, but we're not seeing that reflected on the DJ Moore side. Justin Fields is the QB5 in ADP. Like that's all getting factored in, but like DJ Moore is kind of still being left for dead. Obviously it's low volume, but like, do you think that there's like some squeeze here now, or like maybe we're ignoring kind of, because he goes around a pocket of guys that are kind of not that inspiring either. Like, do you think there's like actual genuine upside here? Like we can tap in. He probably won't get the target count to compete with like the 150 target guys, but like, could he be like the wide receiver, like 12 to 15?
I think so. I have him wide receiver 19, I believe, right now. I started out with him at wide receiver 14, and Leone, our analytics guy, just drilled me on it. I mean, just
to the projections, right? Like, yeah,
just to the point where I lowered him just to shut Leone up. I mean, it got to that point. Yeah, because the projections. He's like,
the spreadsheet socialist win again.
I know. But dude, I love DJ Moore, and I actually like stacking Fields with DJ Moore because I think, I have Fields in that first tier with Mahomes at the end of the tier, but with Mahomes and Lamar and the other dudes, I have him at the end of the tier, but he's the value in that tier because he goes considerably later than Mahomes and the other guys. And then people
are the firewall.
What's that?
And he's kind of the firewall because like the next group of guys are all they're not statues, but you're not getting the rushing out of Herbert, Burrow, and Lawrence like you are the other guys.
Yeah, you might get a little bit of rushing out of Burrow, but I mean he's injured. I mean we don't know if he's going to play week 1. So I really like stacking Fields and DJ Moore, especially in best ball. And I know it's just camp stuff, but like I mean every day there are videos coming out of Fields just putting it on DJ Moore. We know DJ Moore can play. He's still young. He's 26. And Fields, I think, only has an arrow to go upward in terms of his passing capability. You remember when he came out of Ohio State, he was really considered more of a passing quarterback. And then last year we saw him run for over 1,000 yards, become the third quarterback in NFL history to run for over 1,000 yards. His ceiling is through the roof. I am not a Bears fan, okay? I live in Chicago. I actually kind of don't like the Bears, but I think I took the Bears over on 7.5 wins. I took them to win the division at 4-1. I mean, the Vikings aren't scary. The Packers, Jordan Love, not scary. The Lions are a little bit scary, but I still think that the Bears can overcome them. And you look at this Bears schedule, especially to open the season, like I think you start like 6-1. Again, I am not a Bears fan whatsoever, but Justin Fields, MVP, I think is on the table. And I really like DJ Moore. I mean, I think he could be highly efficient this year.
Yeah, he's a guy like when I look at it, and I'm kind of looking at like, man, I need to bump him up, and I was kind of thinking like, all right, so that's kind of what I needed to hear because he was a guy I was like on my mind of like, what am I doing with him? He's kind of in this limbo area, but I look at the guys going around him, and I'm like, there's definitely a world where DJ Moore outscores Jerry Jeudy, right? A world where he outscores Terry McLaurin or, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk. Like those are all guys that kind of go around him. There's even probably a range of outcomes where he pushes guys like he could push a guy like T. Higgins, right? Like our Keenan Allen, given to like what could happen with the other guys on their rosters. Obviously, those guys have other things factored into their cost that's getting pulled up, like T. Higgins and the contingency value if something were to happen to Jamar Chase like last year. But yeah, I definitely feel like DJ Moore is a guy that I need to bump up myself. Let me ask you about the guy that's been getting kind of some steam this week. Cecil Lamley has talked about him looking great. Now we're starting to get more reports that Courtland Sutton is looking back. He's looking lean. He lost 10 pounds. He's looking fast and explosive. That was never really his game even coming out. He was always kind of a bully. And then we can factor in too. Let's kind of congeal this into like our overall thoughts on the Broncos and the changeover to Sean Payton. Like Sutton in general, you can share your opinion on him and then kind of tie that into some of these guys that let down last year. Like you see Sutton got steamed up to like almost a fringe wide receiver 1 by the time we drafted last year. And now he's like wide receiver 40. Gabe Davis got steamed up last year. left, like burned some people, and now like people don't even want him, right? Just like, so you can even tie into that, like Brandon Cooks is another guy who I'm high on and thinks like the market overcorrected on, like, because he was a high draft pick last year. I don't know about Darnell Mooney if you're going to include him because they added DJ Moore, but like talk about Sutton first. And then like in general, these guys that like have bad years because maybe they were just inflated too high. Do you look to buy on those guys because like the market is just overcorrects themselves?
Sutton is suddenly, and I removed him from my top 150 at one point when their wide receiver room was full. But then Tim Patrick goes out for the year, and KJ Hamler is out indefinitely. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, and they try to trade Courtland Sutton. That was a huge red flag to me.
Right.
At this point, they have to embrace him as their starting X receiver, Jerry Jeudy in the slot, and then Marvin Mims as like the Z receiver. Marvin Mims, the guy that I think Sean Payton sees a lot of Brandon Cooks in. Brandon Cooks, of course, was drafted by Sean Payton in New Orleans. But yeah, I mean, the reports have been positive. Really, if you look in hindsight, and Courtland Sutton scored 2 touchdowns last year. So he sucked in fantasy, all right? I mean, touchdowns move the needle more than anything in fantasy by far. They're also the most difficult thing to predict. He had almost 65 catches and over 800 yards coming back from a pretty severe knee injury. That's really not that bad now relative to his ADP last year. And I was high on him and I missed on him. But relative to his ADP, obviously he was a fantasy bust. But those really aren't that bad of numbers for a player coming off the injury that he was. And now I think he's locked into the three receiver sets. We're hearing that he's been balling out, winning against Patrick Surtain, which is something that, as a like a sort of downfield clasher, that's what he should do. Russell Wilson, and I understand he's coming off a terrible season, okay? But his calling card, besides his dual threat, has always been like he's a great deep ball passer. And Courtland Sutton is their best option, I think, right now to win downfield. Maybe that will become Marvin Mims, but I think that's Courtland Sutton right now. So you can definitely tell yourself a story where Courtland Sutton has a big-time bounce-back year, and I think that he has a potential to become a value at his ADP. I would say the same with Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis dealt with that the ankle injury. He played through it. At the end of the year, Josh Allen, he had his arm thing. It kind of just didn't click for Gabe Davis last year. And I don't think he's a great player or anything, but he's going to be out on the field for 80% of the snaps in one of the best offenses in football. It's not like they brought in competition for him. They brought in Dalton Kincaid, who's going to play in the slot and probably be like a rotational tight end who comes off the field in a lot of situations. And then who was the third guy? Oh, Brandon Cooks. I'm with you on Brandon Cooks. I've been drafting a lot of Brandon Cooks, actually, because he's cheap. The camp reports on him have been really good. Like he's already like a team leader in Dallas. And it just makes a lot of sense. He was a great complimentary pickup for them to go with CeeDee Lamb. I think they're going to throw the crap out of the ball in Dallas this year. I mean, I know that they're probably going to have a good defense, but Mike McCarthy's history, and he's taken over as the play caller after they let go of Kellen Moore. Mike McCarthy's history as a play caller, high pass volume in Green Bay. I think they're going to continue to throw the ball voluminously, or they're going to resume throwing the ball voluminously in Mike McCarthy's first year as the play caller.
Yeah, I've had that same take. So I'm someone that says, like, even if coaches want to do something, the best players are eventually going to find their ways onto the field. And when you look at the Dallas Cowboys personnel, like they are made to play 11 personnel and like in space, right?
Yep.
Like you lose Dalton Schultz, you lose kind of their grinder back, Ezekiel Elliott, you add Brandon Cooks, you get Michael Gallup a year removed from the ACL. Like this team is meant to open up, and Dak Prescott is plenty good enough to lead like a really good offense.
Sure.
And then you get like contingency value. Like if something were to happen to CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks takes a step up. He's basically like the wide receiver 42 in these drafts. And I feel like at worst, I'm going to wash. Like I'm going to be even there at worst. And then at best case scenario, I'm looking at like a weekly wide receiver 2. And then like the ceiling apex outcome is, if something were to happen to CeeDee Lamb, which we don't want to have happen, is that he can be back to being like a top 20 wide receiver. again. So, I mean, yeah, I'm curious your take on the Broncos in general. Like, what do you believe that Sean Payton is going to be the guy to get through to Russell Wilson? Because Russell Wilson's game has never changed. Like every offense, there's the narrative, let Russ cook. Russ does the same shit all the time. Like every offense looks like the Russell Wilson offense. And now the defensive meta that is going on in the NFL has structured itself to kind of prevent what Russ is best at, right? Like the NFL wants you to have 10 play drives. They want you to get 6 yards on first down, 4 yards on first down, and they want to prevent giving up these 3 play touchdown drives. Mm-hmm. And Russ is a big game hunter, man. Like he wants to throw outside the numbers and he wants to throw the rock vertical. And the last 2 years, it's been a huge problem. And I wish we would have gone back and factored in like that 4-game stretch where Geno Smith played more in 2021. And it not only for Geno Smith and DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett's sake last year, because they were great values last year, but also what happened in Denver, because Nathaniel Hackett took the heat for this. And I'm not defending Nathaniel Hackett's job either, but Russell Wilson did the same shit Russell Wilson's always done. And it was a problem for the Denver Broncos, and on top of a number of other issues. So do you think Sean Payton's going to be the one to, or like get through this? And do you think Russ was even like humbled by what happened last year, if he could be?
Well, I think that I think that I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I don't even
just watch your face sink.
At the end of the day, like, you know what really sticks in my brain is the Broncos giving Jarrett Stidham a 2-year, $10 million deal with $5 million guaranteed. Like that to me is like, you know, is Russell Wilson going to be on a short leash? Number one. Number two, Russell Wilson actually kind of finished the season strong after they got rid of Nathaniel Hackett. At the same time, I'm concerned that Russell Wilson, like his athleticism isn't what it used to be. I mean, he's about to be 35 years old.
Yeah.
Turning 35 years old in November. But that Jarrett Stidham contract, it kind of bothers me a little bit as it pertains. Like, I'm not drafting Russell Wilson like whatsoever, because I think that there's like a legitimate chance that he could get benched.
And kind of like there's the narrative that Russ balled out after Hackett was fired, and he was good for fantasy in those 2 games, but he wasn't a good quarterback in those games. In the Week 17 game, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, so it's like impossible to be bad for fantasy football with 2 rushing touchdowns. Trust me, I wrote an article on it 10 years ago. But he only threw for 220 yards, and he threw a touchdown interception in the game. The next week, he threw 3 touchdown passes, but only completed 54% of his passes. So he kind of like luck, but like he was good for fantasy those games, but like there wasn't like really anything strong to say like to stick a feather in the cap of like Russ was playing good quarterback in those games. Like we got the fantasy points, but he was really good in those games. So I'm really curious though, because I believe like he has to manifest, like he has to calibrate his game like to the way defenses are playing now. And I don't know if we're going to see that, right? Like it takes a leap of faith. I hope Peyton is the guy to kind of get that through to him. Let me talk to you about just a couple guys on the way out here too. I've got to talk to you about this 49ers thing. The 49ers situation. Seems like they're having an ultimate QB mid-off right now in training camp. Obviously, we know they are going to give Brock Purdy a chance. He deserves it the way he finished the season. But how confident are you? Because Brock Purdy torched some really bad defenses. And we've seen that this system will elevate functional quarterback play because there's so much talent in this offense. George Kittle, Brandon Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey. Like, is this a situation where we could be walking into just another Jimmy Garoppolo situation where when you have these matchups, this offense is going to look like it can't be stopped. And then you see when they face a team that can rush the passer, like the Cowboys, he faced one team that was higher than 15th in pressure rate, and it was the Cowboys. And the offense kind of looked like Brock Purdy's last year at Iowa State. And it was like, so how confident are you that one, Purdy can even roll over what he did at the end of last year? Obviously, they're saying that he doesn't have any restrictions except for the days he has restrictions, which is very unique. And then do we see like any of these other 49ers play? What kind of leash do you think Purdy even has? Because this is a team, the 49ers, they have the worst rest differential in the NFL. Like, what if they have some losses early in the year? Could we see them even make a change and blame this on an elbow?
Well, I don't think that they're going to make the changes to Trey Lance, because
no.
I think that I don't think it's that they don't like him as a guy or anything. I think he's just clearly not a fit for Kyle Shanahan's offense. Like, the big wind up. This is a timing and rhythm offense. It's a get the ball to the playmakers. Why do we spend all this money and all these high draft picks on Deebo Samuel and Brandon Aiyuk and George Kittle? Is because we just want to get the ball in their hands and they're going to make plays after the catch. And Trey Lance with the taking forever to get the ball out and the Byron Leftwich wind up, like that ain't going to work. So I guarantee you that he's available for trade. It's just all they're getting is like, because he has all his tape is real bad too. And he had like almost no tape from college. You remember he had like what?
He's thrown 420 passes since high school.
Oh, wow. That's insane.
In games.
I think I've thrown more passes. So it's not going to be him. I mean, would they go to Sam Darnold? Maybe. I don't know. But I think they love Brock Purdy. And I think that Brock Purdy actually, I thought that he should have just gone higher in the draft period. I think they love him. I know he's, there are restrictions on date. I think that they're just being a little cautious with that. And I think he's the perfect quarterback to execute their system. He's Kirk Cousins, who went in the 4th round, not that much higher, and just, runs the offense, doesn't make mistakes, plays within the structure and gets the ball to the playmakers. And I think he's the perfect fit for their offense. I think he's locked in. And all the beat writers seem to think he's locked in as well.
Yeah, I think every signal they've given us is that he's absolutely going to be the week 1 starter.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Yeah, just this so much seems like fragile there. The reason they had to even trade for Trey Lance stuff is because of the punching up situation, right? Like the Garoppolo was awesome in these, against all these mediocre teams, right? And then when they have to punch up and he have to play out of structure, is that going to be limitations again? That's what gives me just like a little bit of pause, but
right.
Like, dude, like if you can just get the ball into the hands of these other guys, like you're going to have some just like natural, elevation through the playmakers on this offense. Are you worried about any of the 49ers in general, like at cost? Because they're a tricky team, obviously. Christian McCaffrey, everyone talks like the splits when Eli Mitchell played. Like if they're a good enough team, do they try to like give him some workload maintenance? It looked like they were doing that at the end of last year. And then the weeks that they couldn't, he was like the bell cow. Is there enough targets? Because we've seen the splits when all of these guys are on the field, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Brandon Aiyuk. Kittle has like an 11% target share. Brandon Ayuk's target share with or without Deebo Samuel drops way off. Brock Purdy targeted Deebo Samuel 28% of the time when Deebo Samuel is available to be played. Like, does it elevate any of these guys for you? Or like, are you finding yourself taking these guys? Is there any caution? Or you just say like, these guys are too good at football, I'm going to take my chances?
Well, I haven't done, I don't think, a single redraft season long. Actually, this Apex is the first redraft season long, non-best ball draft that I've done actually so far this offseason. So I've been doing all best ball. And in best ball, you don't got to worry about that. Because, I mean, they're all going to be super volatile week to week. We know that about George Kittle. Deebo Samuel's very much like that. Brandon Aiyuk is going to be like that. Christian McCaffrey is probably going to be the only guy who's really consistent week to week. But so I don't know. I would definitely shy away more from the 49ers skill position players in redraft season long. But again, I've only done one redraft season long so far. I don't have any 49ers so far.
As you transition, because that's a great, like, kind of like almost a little mini segue there. It's like, because this is like now we're going to start drafting our redraft teams, these like final 3 weeks. And it's easy to kind of get lost in the best ball brain, right? Like, so are there any other guys like you find yourself like you got to be cognizant to like kind of calibrate yourself on that you would have, like, you're like, oh, I'm up in this spot. I always take this guy, but like you're kind of like, ooh, in a weekly lineup league, I might not want to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers guys really stick out. I think that Marquez Valdes-Scantling is a guy who I've been just getting a ton of late in best ball drafts because he has spike week potential, and I wouldn't mess with him in season long.
And he's going to be out there. People don't think MVS is not going to be running them wind sprints. He's going to be out there.
He is. Donovan Peoples-Jones is another guy that I really like taking. Especially when I draft Deshaun Watson a little bit earlier. I like taking Donovan Peoples-Jones later. Nico Collins is that kind of a guy. Yeah, I don't know. Those are some guys off the top of my head.
Yeah, those all stand out. My guy is like Rashad Penny. Like I've been taking swings at him, but I would never like. There's no reason to draft him in a really redraft league because good luck getting your touchdown right. Like, when you set that lineup every week. Are you really taking like any of these stance on the Eagles guys, the
Well,
running backs, the running backs?
did you see the reports that came out today that Kenneth
Yeah.
has been like dominating first team RB reps in Eagles camp? I was super excited about that one because he's my highest owned or highest drafted player in best ball. I know he is for our buddy Pat Thorman as well. And we've just been on him so hard because of the way that they used him in the playoffs. He averaged over 13 touches per game in the playoffs. He was playing a ton of snaps. DeAndre Swift cannot handle a ton of snaps. Rashad Penny, really good runner between the tackles, not going to be a factor in the passing game, and has a long injury history. So, and I think the coaching staff loves Kenneth Gainwell. So that was exciting to me, especially because he's been going so late. He's the cheapest member of that, 3 or even 4-headed running back committee. And well, I guess Boston Scott would technically be the cheapest, but he's the cheapest among the top 3. And I don't know. To me, he has been like the most obvious draft pick so far because you could get him in the 16th round, and they treated him like a lead back in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, Trey Sermon erasure happening.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the other thing going back to Purdy, like the Kyle Shanahan hubris.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't have any problem like with that.
No player in the NFL more runs like he has a piano on his back than Trey Sermon.
Yeah, it's hilarious, man. Yeah, I mean that's largely just about it, man. Let's talk real quick on the way out this Apex draft we're in. It's always just we've been doing this for about I think I want to say a decade. It's been about 10 years. It's just this conglomeration of all these guys. You've been in it since the start. Sigmund Bloom's been in it since the start. Mike Clay's been in it since the start. JJ Zacharyson, CD Carter have been in it since the start. Myself, Browd has been in it. Sean Siegel's been in it since the start. And we rotated some guys in and out, but right now the other guys that make up this league are Matt Harmon, Graham Barfield, and Roto Pat Doherty, and Ian Hartitz, I shouldn't forget too, is in this league now they're like newer members in the last couple of years. It's just a beast. You will see no draft where wide receivers get hit like this. And you picked 4. Kind of just talk to everyone a lot, like kind of your process. 1, talk about like how unique this league is compared to others you play in, and then 2, kind of your approach to how you started. Because I like your start a lot.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad doing this draft every year and like broadcasting it because it is so not reflective of anyone's home league. This is like, first of all, it's like you want to start, it's full PPR. You really want to start 4 wide receivers every week, 3 and then 1 in your flex spot. And there have been years where I've never won the league, but I make the playoffs like almost every year. There have been years where I like tried to go contrarian and and drafted running backs early, and it just kind of doesn't work, or it fizzles out. Because at the end of the season, like you just don't have enough firepower at wide receiver. It's really hard to pick up wide receivers off the waiver wire and have them be starters for you. Like legit viable starters for you. That can happen at running back. Every year there are stud running backs that we find off the waiver wire. Mm-hmm. I started off, and I don't have it in front of me, but I started off Cooper Kupp at 4. T. Higgins, Hartitz sniped me hard at 2.8 to take Jalen Waddle right in front of me. I wanted him so bad at 2.9. Settle for T. Higgins. That's fine, but I really wanted Jalen Waddle. And then I took back-to-back Seahawks receivers, DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in the 3rd and 4th round. And then I was going to maybe take a running back in the 5th round, but I was like, man, I know how these guys draft, and I'm going to end up getting good running backs regardless. So it actually came down to Lamar Jackson or George Kittle for me there in the 5th round, I took Lamar Jackson. And then I came back.
Kittle's still out there.
Kittle's still out there?
Yeah, Kittle's still out there. We've only had 3 tight ends picked. Hawkinson was the latest guy to be taken.
I'm taking Kittle with my next pick if he makes it to me in this.
Yeah, you have 5 more picks before you're up again.
Okay, so I've got a shot. I bet he goes.
But that'll be a nice start. I like your start. I like JJ's start a lot.
And then I took Alexander Mattison in the 6th round, and I really like Alexander Mattison this year because I think he's going to get a ton of volume in like a top 10 offense, and it's just, to me it's like just that simple. I understand maybe you don't think he's that good. I get it. You know, a lot of smart people don't think he's that good. I don't really care because it's all about opportunity and scoring opportunities. And I think he's going to have an opportunity to score a lot of touchdowns. He weighs 221 pounds. He's built to execute at the goal line.
Yeah, Madison's a guy that I've nudged up like periodically because as I've done more like stuff, uncovering, I just had an article come out that talked about like how running back efficiency isn't something we should wait, or inefficiency in his case. We shouldn't get kind of lost in the weeds in that. And, I've to remind myself sometimes, so it's easy to say like, oh, I don't think this dude's good. And like, sometimes it doesn't matter. Right.
Right.
And we've seen we've seen a lot of this happen, right? Where a running back just isn't very efficient. And the next year he comes back and is good, right? Like Le'Veon Bell. I don't want to say Alex Harrison's going to be Le'Veon Bell, but that happened. Melvin Gordon. I think that also applies to some guys like Rachaad White, right? Like Rachaad White's getting dragged for like how he played as a rookie and when no one would have ran in that offense, right? Like what if there's just a better run out, like we'll see. But I'm just saying like this, I've come off of like not being so stuck on like the inefficiency some of these guys have had, and I'm still focused on more of the opportunities. So what's funny is I actually moved Alexander Mattison ahead of Najee Harris, and Najee Harris went ahead of him here in this draft. But I won this league last year. It was the first time I won it. I was super happy. So fade me this year. Because I got stuck. I'm picking 6, which is like the worst spot to pick this year. And I was set to take Stephon Diggs because like I'm just cognizant. I'm like, oh, these jackals, these wide receiver jackals, man, they're hyenas. Like, it doesn't matter. You got to fight for scraps at wide receiver. And I was set to take Stephon Diggs, and Hartz jumped me at 5 and took him. And Diggs is kind of like the firewall for me. Like, so I was stuck. I was, I guess I take McCaffrey here, and I did. And then coming back, it was like, I'm super in love with Tony Pollard, so I took him. So I have like the high tier start in this draft. So I just hope I can get enough, like you said, wide receiver production. But I'll be happy that I cashed mine in last year. Hopefully I can roll it over, but we'll see what happens and what I can do the rest of this draft though. But I always like, said close out when I have you, someone I'm just super grateful for, not only to have you, in my life as what is, I believe, a friend now, but the doors you opened for me early in my career. Like you have so many people.
You believe we're friends?
Oh, no, sorry, man. I guess we aren't. Guess we aren't anymore. You hate to see it.
Oh my gosh.
No. But listen, I always appreciate you taking your time and, coming on these shows and everything you've done for me. I still want to let you know, and I tell you this in person every time I see you too.
Hey, hell yeah, dude. I mean, coming back from Cape Cod. Oh, you remember we had that the COVID scare. Remember? I was driving back from Cape Cod last year, 18-hour drive, but we go right through Cleveland. I'm like, dude, why would we not go say hi to Reeves? And we found out on the way back that like everyone that I was with got COVID. And so I didn't want to like go, bring COVID over to the Hribar family. I mean, you guys have like you guys roll deep. And
Philip Rivers style.
Pulled over at a Walgreens, took some COVID tests, and thankfully they turned out negative. We went and had an awesome lunch. I think we got ice cream, or we went to the candy shop or something.
Took the kids, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that was the last time that
we've seen each other in person, yeah.
Yeah, that was the last time we've seen each other in person. But I always have a blast. We went to 2 baseball games. Went to 2 Cubs games last year. But it's always a blast to talk to you, Reeves, on the phone late night or, see you in real life or in this podcast sort of form. So thanks so much for inviting me on, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. Let everyone know on your way out what you guys got cooking these last 3 weeks at ETR, man.
So much. I mean, I'm finishing up my team previews right now. keeping my top 150 updated on a semi-daily basis. You know, the preseason is really kicking into full gear this weekend, and so we'll have a ton of changes based on that. I know that people say that the preseason doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter in real life football, but it does matter in terms of depth charts, and depth charts matter in fantasy football. So it's very important, and we're going to have super in-depth coverage of that. So come check us out at Establish the Run on Twitter, establishtherun.com on the internets.
Beautiful. He's Evan Silva. I'm Rich Hribar. Everyone enjoy these games for what they can this weekend, and just be ready because football is right around the corner. We'll see you guys next week.